the first thing I want to show you is I bought a new set of watercolor, a watercolor box, and they are okay, Winsor Newton, the Cotman series. And what I really like about them is that they have really big pans. You've noticed a lot of watercolor boxes come in really small pans, and it's kind of hard if you're doing like a big wash or something. So this has the really big pans. And of course you can replace these and get different colors when they run out. You probably have to do that on a site online. But Winsor Newton is a very nice brand. So this is a large set. It was about, I think, $60, but this will last you a very, very long time. I mean, a long time. So it's definitely worth the investment. And it also has a really nice, when you open it, it has these two palettes on the side that you can use to mix your colors. So they are brand new. They're still dry, so I'm gonna try them out with you guys, and I'm gonna talk about I want to introduce some new colors for us to use and for you to consider. And let's see what else. So the only thing I would probably be adding to this palette would be my pinks, simply because I like to get a really bright pink. So there's 3 different pinks that I like. And they go from a more subdued to a more vibrant. So, so Opera Rose is going to be like a really, really bright, almost fluorescent pink, which is really nice in very small doses. Rose Madder is really a red, but it's very, very washed out, but it really gives very nice skin tones. And then the Permanent Rose, which is like a true, kind of ballet pink, like a really pretty, pretty pink. So, and email me or text me if you need the names of these. But that would be kind of what I would add to them, to the palette. And I don't think anything else really. It seems to have everything that we need.
I have the little half pans by Winsor Newton, and I think it has the Rose Madder in there.
Yeah, it probably does. The palette that I've been using before, my Sennelier, which I had to stop using because they're so, I mean, I will use them for portraits and stuff, but they're tiny. And of course, when you get the smaller pans, you're going to get more pans and I think this is the Rose Madder in here. So the sets that have 24 or 36 colors will probably have it.
Yeah.
And
yes?
Could you have Justin write down the name of the new paint and the tubes, because I can't really see the name, if he would include them in his next email.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll make a suggested new list for the watercolor box and the colors. Definitely. We can do that. Okay, so we did watercolors last week. So again, this is kind of the course we're doing. We're doing 2 of each tool or medium that we're using. So last week we did the bees and they turned out so beautiful. I love everything that you've sent me. And I really loved seeing the play on the dark colors, how some of you kind of exaggerated the purple or the blue or the green undertones or browns. I think that was a really fun project to do. So our little birds today are really, this is going to be a project to have fun with. Birds are wonderful to paint. The shape is very simple. The colors are beautiful. And because they're in constant motion, there's really no set specific way that you need to do the bird, as long as you have the general form down. So there's a lot of room for playing around with it, for stylizing, for abstracting or exaggerating colors. So if you're interested, just, look up bird paintings. I like to look at paintings and see how others have dealt with it. So the one we're doing today is definitely a wet on wet project. And it's the kind of painting that you don't want to fuss with too much. You know, you don't want to take it too seriously. There are hummingbirds on a wire. There are all these different colors. It's light and sweet, and there's no need to, you know, to stress over it or to try to get certain details. The only areas where you're just gonna have to be just a little bit mindful is going to be the beak and the I don't know what it's called, their extended beak. So also I like it because it has that little flecking of the colors around, and it's just a fun thing to do. So over here I have one that I started and, you know, almost done with. Let me get my light a bit closer. Okay. All right. So one of the things that I did here, the original image that we have. Melissa, can you just mute the mic so I can? There's a lot of echo. Thank you. Okay. So what I did is I kind of brought them a little bit closer together. Now I do have paper that is very, you know, wide format, and you can get that, or you can crop the paper. But for the sake of conducting the class and showing you what I'm doing, it would be very hard to have a long and narrow piece. So I brought my birds a little bit closer together. So what happened is sometimes their beaks would overlap, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of a creative freedom that I took to make it better. And it also helped me just make the birds a little bit bigger, because I need it to be big so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Okay. So basically what we're going to do today is we're going to work on each bird individually, and we're going to work on the set of colors that are in them. So what we're going to do now, the shape is extremely, extremely simple. So if you look at the basic shape of a bird, they call it, you know, like, you know, a boat shape, because basically that is, I need to get a stronger pen. Okay. So basically what you are getting with a bird, any kind of bird, you're getting that boat shape, which of course is how they fly. The concentration of muscles is kind of in the middle. So when you're painting, you want to be mindful that this is kind of a strong area. So the feathers go lightly, but always, you know, show that there is a strength in that core area of the bird. Now, depending on how the bird is sitting, in our case, we are seeing them we're seeing them perched. So we're getting that a little bit from the side, almost like an avocado or a pear shape. And then we're getting the tail and the beak and a little bit of the feathers. So again, you know, very, very simple shapes that we're going to be working with. So since they're all kind of in the same position, except for the direction of their heads, we're going to kind of do them the same. We're going to do kind of like 6 avocado shapes. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a very kind of nondescript color, so I can make my wet areas. And we want it to be light, and we want it to be a color that is going to easily blend in with everything. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this dark brown over here. I'm just going to take a little bit of purple. That is not purple. Okay, maybe this is purple. And that is not purple either. Okay. So again, I'm creating kind of a grayish color. Put a little bit brown and purple. And I'm going to put a lot of water on it, so I have a nice puddle. And this is going to be the color that I'm going to use to just mark my birds. Okay, so we want to be able to fit 6 of them. What you can do is you can mark with a pencil where you want them to be. like 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm just going to use my brush and I'm finding my middle. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and I have 1, 2, 3. Now they don't have to be evenly spaced. They're all sitting on this branch or wire. Maybe it's a wire. And so they're all kind of at the same level, but the branch itself is not steady. So they kind of go up and down and they end up being at slightly different heights. Okay. So the first thing is the marking. So I have them marked. And what I'm going to do is I am going to make each one, just give it a little bit of shape. Again, we talked about that avocado shape, and just with the same very barely there light color, I'm just going to almost make a ghost of that bird. Melissa, there's a lot of background noise. I don't know if it's somebody's mic. Okay, so again, I'm doing the slight kind of pear avocado shape with, and just when you're doing this, just kind of look at the direction of the tail. Again, you want this to be very light because you have a bunch of really bright colors that are going to be incorporated. This little guy here looks like he's gonna fall. Okay. Okay, and then we have the first one that is over here. Okay, so what this is doing is two things. This is marking the places where the birds are going to go. It can give me, if I get to it before it dries, it's giving me a ground for the wet on wet, but mostly we're using this for placement. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna place the wire or the branch, and I'm gonna kind of just use that same color that I did, and I am going to put the branch. So it crosses in, you have to look at the bird, just pick one that kind of seems more central, and it's going to be in the lower third of the bird. So again, we're just doing this to have the branch marked where it is. Okay, I can see that this bird needs to be lowered. And the cool thing about starting out like this is that, you know, this is even better than pencil because you will have no pencil marks. You already will be covering some ground by adding some of these colors. You know, so you don't have to do it in several steps, sketching it out, etc. And, you know, anything that you don't want can fall in the background. The colors are light enough to where you will not have any color disrupting it or anything. So that light is okay. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with each bird on its own. And what we're going to do, the plan here is going to be to start with the bright colors, such as, and the warm colors, such as the pinks, oranges, yellows, and then move into the cool colors on the bird. The reason is if you get, because we're working wet on wet, you want to try to lessen the effect of the colors bleeding into each other and giving you unnecessary or undesirable effects. So in some places it's going to be okay, but in some areas like this guy over here where you have that strong red, you really want it to stay red. So you don't want the blue running into it. So you want a little bit more control. So always the bright and light colors first. Okay, so you can start with any guy that you want. So I'm using here, this is a number 8 brush. It's kind of a medium and it's round. The round means it's rounded all around. So that's a moppy brush. It's going to give me, and I recommend that you have, you know, two things of water. Use one for the blues, greens, purples, and one for the bright colors. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one, with the second one from the right. And so he compromises of turquoise on the head, greens, and reds and oranges on his chin and a little bit of his chest. So I'm going to start with that strong, bright red and orange. So you want to go with the brightest red that you have. Okay. Now this is actually almost dry, so I'm going to just wet that a little bit more. And see, already got some pink, but it's light enough. I'm just going to wet it a little bit, and make sure when you wet it that you just wet the areas that you want the paint to go into. So if you don't wet the paper, the paint is not going to go there. So it is the paint will be flowing and playing around within the area of the of where the water is. So I'm going to make a turquoise. So I have a little bit of this dark green, and take a little bit of blue. In some sets, you will have a turquoise that's already there. And this is kind of pretty. So I'm going to drop that in here. Oh, I totally forgot that I was doing the red. My apologies. I don't know why I got sidetracked. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my red. If you did the turquoise, that's fine. It's still far enough from the red to be okay. So I'm taking some of the red. I'm taking a little bit of orange. And I'm just gonna drop them in here, just literally like little dots. So I have another smaller brush over here, and this is a number, what is this? This is probably a 4, I imagine. I'm not sure. You can't see it. And I'm gonna take a little bit of red and just drop it in here. So remember, this is probably not gonna be the final coloring that you're going to do. You're probably gonna be adding to it. But at this point, this is giving you some nice color to work with. So these are going to start playing a little bit, and what's going to happen here is that these are probably going to blend a little bit, and that's fine because it's actually giving us a desirable color. So I'm going to move from the turquoise to a little bit more of a brighter green. I'm going to go back to my slightly larger brush. Okay, and you see this green is more of a sap green. It just is a little bit just more subdued. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the green. Now we start seeing some browns kind of peeking in. Try to move this closer so you can see how I'm picking up my colors. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of brown. Okay, just dropping it in the green. And again, so in this lower part, it's a combination of different greens, a little bit of brown, and maybe a little bit of gold on the side. And again, you know, just drop the colors in. You know, you don't want too much, but just enough to give them the opportunity to kind of, you know, play around a little bit. Just adding brown in this area here. Okay. And then another thing you can do is you just can take some water and just kind of group them a little bit if you feel that they need it. And this is definitely one of those situations where going outside the lines is totally acceptable. Again, so I'm going back and forth between the two brushes. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of gold up here. Okay, so I have my first bird kind of getting situated. I'm gonna put just a teeny drop of purple. And I'm gonna put it right in here. Just a little bit, just to kind of mark that dark area. Okay, so we're gonna do the bird, the very first one on the right. And again, we're gonna start with the bright colors, with the reds, the oranges, because red is one color that if it gets a little bit dirtied, it's just not gonna have the brightness that it needs to stand out, and it will immediately turn maroon or turn brownish. So we are going to wet that area a little bit. And when you wet it, don't just go over your initial kind of ghost bird that you did. Just make sure that you're just fixing the shape a little bit more and try to think where you want the water to be. Like I feel here at the bottom, this needed to be wider, and maybe just go down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to start with my reds. And again, in this set, there is 3 reds. So this one is kind of the cool red, and I'm going to take it and drop some of it in. And it's just so cool when it just starts kind of just moving around. I'm going to take the lightest red, which is almost like an orange, and I'm going to drop it and let them play around. Okay, so as it moves further down, it becomes more of an orange and almost like a terracotta color. So I'm starting to drop the orange. Now, if you felt that the paint was too thick or too much, just take a little bit of water and let it flow. I'm going to take a little bit of brown. And start adding it to that color. So this brown is a it has a little bit of warmth to it. So I'm going to move to the other one that is a little bit cooler, and I'm also going to drop it in. And we're getting some browns, a teeny touch of purple, kind of almost framing that bird. And see, the purple looks really pretty when you drop it in with the browns. And then just kind of let it trail into the tail. So the red really took off here. I don't see that as being a problem, but what you can do if, you know, let's say you're working on something very precise and this entire area needed to be green. I mean, it can be pink. You can just pick up some of it. And I'm going to put in the green. So the green over here is really bright. So I think I'm going to put a little bit, I'm going to take the 2 greens that I have, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. I'm going to add a little bit of this lemon yellow here, which is a color really that is best used for mixing and not kind of on its own. So this is going to give me that brightness. As I get in here, I'm just dropping it into the other colors. So you can see it's not really interfering with the reds. It's mixing just enough to where it's creating like an extra color that we want. Okay, we've got 2 birds down. We are plugging along. Okay, so this guy over here needs to be lower. He's kind of sitting a little bit too high. And his main colors is his belly is has a lot of purple in it. It has, you know, grays, and the head is golden, oranges, and ochres, and then he's got some pink and red on the side. So there is one color that I want to talk to you about, and when I often, encourage you to not use black, there are situations where you want to use black, and the reason I do that is that it's an easy color to just work with and just kind of take off, and it can easily dominate a painting until you get to a point where you can really control your colors and know how to create dark colors without having resort to black. I feel more comfortable with you using it. But there is another color when you just want a little bit of shade, and that color is called Pain Gray, Payne. And I believe it's this one over here. So what Pain Gray is, it's not quite black, but it is a color that it's like a bluish gray. So it looks black when you put it on. Then when you add water, it's going to give you, is that shining? Okay. I'm just kind of going to show you what it looks like. So sometimes just using a little bit of that Pain Gray. So if you don't have it, that's also a color I'm going to add to the list. And usually Pain Gray is used as a mixer. It's not used on its own because it's kind of a non-color. But that is like, for example, in this third bird over here in this area, we do have a lot of dark, but you don't want to do the black, especially with such vibrant colors. The Pain Gray will be an excellent just little touch of darkness without having to mix too many colors. So we're going to start with putting in some of the purples. Okay, I've got my purple here. And I'm going to put some blue in this area. This is another cool thing about this set. I mean, just these wide palettes, like if you're working within the same colors, you can just place them here. And this is a whole lot easier to clean. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that little guy, and I'm just going to move him down a little bit. So I'm just going to add some water. And, just take some of the tinted water just so you can see what you're doing. Okay, he was just sitting a little bit too high. Okay, so I'm going to wet this area. And also another thing you can do if you want to be more precise, you can wet each area at a time. You can wet when you do the purples and blues, and then you can wet when you do the golds. But as long as you are not putting too much paint or too much water, the slight interaction that they have is actually going to create colors that will look good in this situation. Okay, so I'm going to take some of that purple, make it a little bit stronger. A little bit of blue. And when you work on an area, let's say we know we have the purples and blues, use all the purples and blues that are in your set. Try different combinations. The more color richness you give to an area, the more depth your painting is going to have. Okay. And the bottom part seems to have a little bit more blue. Okay, so now I'm going to use the Pain Gray that I was just showing you. I'm just going to take a little bit of it and I'm going to drop it in. Just going to take a little bit more water. And see, it's giving it a darker value, but it's not changing the color much. It's not a strong pigment, this color, so it will just darken it a little bit without changing it too much. And if you don't have that color, you can use a teeny bit of black, very, very little, be very careful, or use the mix of colors like the brown with purple and green like we do, which, to me, depending on what I'm doing, that is probably the safest thing. I don't always use Pain Gray. In certain situations, I will use it. Okay, so we're going to move to the the pink that he has in his chest. And I think that's where I'm going to take one of my separate pinks. My other set did have some pinks. This one does not. Okay. So this is just giving me that nice kind of pop of pink. And again, if you don't have that, any red with a little bit of purple will do the job. I'm going to take the smaller brush and I'm going to take a little bit of the darker red. And I'm just going to put it at the edge. Okay. So I'm going to work on the goldens that are here. I'm just going to re-wet that area. So I'm going to go with this almost like mustardy color. I'm going to take a little bit of orange. I'm just going to drop in those colors. I'm going to take a little bit of this terracotta, which I think they also call light red. And the cool thing about these paints is that if you pick it up on the side here, it's going to tell you the name of the color, in case you forget what they are. Okay. Again, I'm using some of the what they call light red, or almost, I call it terracotta. I've always had my own set of names for colors. And again, let it trickle out a little bit. And I'm going to put just a little bit of cooler brown in here. And since I'm working on that brown, I'm just going to put a peek of it down here because I just saw it right now. All right, so we are moving on. We've got bird number, look how cute they look already. They are super cute. Okay, so if we don't get to the last bird, we'll just stop at whichever bird so I can show you how to detail it. We'll just go maybe do a couple more. Okay, so this one over here has, it's very similar to the one before, but it has more of a blue, like a robin's blue rather than the turquoise for the for the head. He has a slightly different position. So again, I am going to wet him. Adjust the shape. I'm just giving it a little bit more volume and a little bit more tail. Okay, so I'm going to start with that peak of red here. So again, I took the more orange red and I dropped it in there. And another thing you will notice is that colors behave differently when you put them in the water. Like the red seems to like really just go. I mean, every color has its own personality because a lot of the colors, you know, come from natural pigments that are going to behave differently when they're wet or when they're next to other colors or when they touch the paper. So also realize that the more you work with your set, the better you will know how each color behaves. So I'm going to put a little bit of gold in here. I'm just going to take a little bit of yellow. And that yellow is going to bridge into that green. Again, I'm going to go with some brighter green. And when you're applying the color, you know, make sure that you don't just apply to the area that you have wetted. Make sure that you look at your reference to just check and see if you need to go a little bit wider, narrower, etc. So I'm going to take a little bit of brown. And this brown is a raw umber, and it has a little bit of green to it. So you will see that, you know, all browns have different undertones to them. Again, that's what that color is that I'm working with. It's this one over here. Almost looks grayish in the palette. Almost looks like a grayish brown. Okay. Okay, I'm going to work on that blue. And I'm taking a look at my blues to see which one would be the best one. It might be this one over here, because that one has the brightness. I don't want any of that cobalt that was in here, because that's kind of the color that we have here. And again, I'm kind of just shaping the head. I'm just gonna put a touch of it in here. Okay, so again, there's some areas that need to be darkened a little bit. So I'm going to go to that pain gray, or you can create a dark color. I'm just going to let it play around in here for a little bit. Okay. So I think what we will do next is we will start detailing some of the birds that are dry and work on them a little bit. So I'm going to start with the one that we started with. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put his eye in. And this one, I can very comfortably tell you, you can use black. You want to make sure that it's dry, because if not, it's going to bleed everywhere. And just at first, you know, just put a little dot to kind of see where the color, where the eye needs to be, and then work on the shape. If this were a larger eye, if we were doing, you know, like a cow or something where we really see the eye, I would not be using the black. I would be using different shades of brown maybe together, and some purples and browns. But this is really small here, so we don't need to, it doesn't allow for doing much layer of color. Okay, so we're going to tackle this, this beak. And I am going to take a little bit of that black, or you could use the pain gray. And we want this to be very light. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put a little bit in the beak. I'm going to bring the camera a little bit closer. Okay. Okay, so I'm putting a little bit, I'm taking just a little bit of water, and I'm kind of blending it in a little bit. So again, you know, this is giving me the introduction to the beak. So always start before the area that you want to work on. Just start a little bit further out. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take water, just plain water, and I'm going to put down a line where I want to do the elongation on the beak. Now, the reason I'm doing this wet on wet, but remember, it has to be a very, very thin line, is I really don't want it to be too sharp, okay? So I'm going to go back and take some of that black or the pain gray, and I'm just going to drop it in there very gently. Okay, now if we want to make some areas a little bit darker, we can. But if I had done that immediately being dark and black, it would be too strong. It would stand out too much because we have all these really bright, sharp colors and some delicate colors. So again, I'm taking a very, very, very thin brush. This is a size 0. And I'm just making just slight marks. Okay. And we're going to work on his little feet. So again, you can take just very little bit of black or pain gray or a very dark color. And just mark the feet in. And what I'm going to do is I am going to just work on giving that branch a little bit more detail, or the wire. It's undecided what it is. So again, take a little bit of the black, very watered down, or a very dark color, or the pain gray, and I'm just going to just very lightly give it a little bit more shape. You can go with a slightly larger brush on this one. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit darker. And just give it a little bit more detail. I'm going to go back to the beak and go a little bit darker right in here. Okay, now I'm looking at the rest of him. It looks like the tail could use just a little bit more fluff. So I'm going to go back to those greens. And I'm just going to, so remember that at this part of the bird, it's sticking out. They're not, you know, they're attached to the body just from the top. So, you know, you can just kind of let them stick out a little bit. And just give them a little bit of personality. I mean, I think the artist even had like some strokes coming down, which is kind of fun. And we can do something like that. Just whatever color you use, let's say you're using the green, just dip your brush in water and just get a very watered down version of that color. And you can just swipe it. Okay. I think he could use a little bit of maybe brown in here, even a little bit of the pain gray. A little bit darker in his wing. Okay, so he's starting to take a lot of shape. Okay, so we are going to move to this guy over here. Oh no, I think this one was first. Okay, so I'm going to brighten this red in here. Because why not? I'm just adding a little bit of red. So now at this point, I'm working with dry paint on, wet paint on dry paper, because now I need to be a little bit more precise, even though throughout the whole thing, we're not using that much precision. Okay, I'm going to take some of the pain gray or a really dark color, and I am going to put in the darker areas that I'm seeing. See how nicely it just like gives a little shadow on some of the colors. I'm going to put in the wire. Take a little bit of black, put his little feet. I'm going to place his eye. And I'm going to start off his beak. Now, one thing I like to do when something is in front of something, I just like to give it a little bit of a shadow. So right underneath, like where I want to show the branch, I'm just going to kind of darken underneath it, okay? So you can see that's helped making it kind of stand out a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing with the bird right next to it. It just helps with placement and showing where things are in the order that they appear. Okay, so this is probably going to be one of the very few times that we actually use a color that we probably never have before, and that color is white, which a lot of people ask, what is the white for in watercolors? It's definitely not a color you want to use to mix because it'll make your colors pasty. But what we're going to do is we want to give our little birds, our little hummingbirds, we want to give them a little sparkle in the eye. And the reason you want to use white, or you could even use like a white pen if you don't have white, or if you are worried it might run. Of course, that has to be dry. It's because that would have been just way too complicated to leave out that space white on such a small area. If this were a big area, like I told you, an eye of a larger animal, then I definitely would have made the effort. But this is so small that putting a little bit of white, which is very chalky. So I'm just gonna take that with a very thin brush, and I'm just going to put that drop in there. See what a difference it makes? Again, just taking the white with the tip of the brush, put it in the other eye. Maybe a little bit more. And if it's not strong enough, you can strengthen it and add to it. So that's what the white is for things like this. Okay. So of course, all of these, well, let's work on his little beak. So again, I'm going, now they're crossing because they're closer than they are in the picture, and I'm totally fine with that. So I'm just going to, with water, I'm just going to put where I want that beak to be. I'm just going to take a little bit of very watered down black or paint gray or really dark color and just drop it in. Okay, now inside this little area here, it's a little bit darker, so I am going to take some black. Again, these are teeny brushes that I'm working with. And I'm actually going to just make this eye a little bit more defined. Okay. Give it a little bit of detail. And again, I love these brushes. They're like $2.50. They're very inexpensive. I can also send you the name of them. They're from Texas Art Supply. And, you know, if you buy them, buy more than one, because, you know, this fine tip doesn't, you know, it doesn't hold up very well. So you will, I mean, I always have like several because they're weak, they're little, they're teeny. Okay, so what we're gonna do next is we're going to, well, actually, let me just detail a little bit more on these. So I'm gonna take some of the pain gray, and I'm gonna mix it with some of the red. I'll just show you what I'm doing over here. And I'm putting it in this area in here. Okay, so another thing you can do at this point is you can start taking, you know, colors that you're seeing that are almost like dotted, not the speckling or the spraying, but just like kind of like over here, you're just seeing almost like spots. And you can put those in. It's going to give the areas a little bit more depth. I think these would make absolutely beautiful greeting cards. Just do one bird and make the card like really small. You know, they would be so sweet. I think people would love to have them. And I realize we did not have the end of the wire. Okay, I'm going to give it some of its spots. And what's interesting about this piece is like there's really no attempt to, you know, really make the feathers or make that texture, but at the same time, just how the colors flow, it's suggesting that there are feathers, and especially, you know, at the bottom with kind of just the wispy edges. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to continue this with all of the birds, or half of them if you want. If you want to do this again, you know, just do a couple. I just loved how their composition is so sweet, and I thought it would be fun to kind of, you know, kind of just experiment with all those colors. Now, one last thing to do with all the paint you have on your palette is to do some of the speckles and some of the dots. So you can either use what's in here, or you can. So what I recommend when we do this part is don't go too dark, because then the speckles will be really dark. So you want to have just a nice combination of some dark, but most of them to be light and bright. So I'm just going to add some water. And there's different ways you can do this. So what I recommend you doing is going like from the bird outwards, kind of. And do that, and not do it like directly on them. Okay. Let's take some of the green. If you don't have enough, you can mix some. And again, the really small brush. So depending on the size of the brush that you're using for that, you will get different results. So you can do it like this. So again, you know, from the bird outwards. This is a little bit stronger. And another thing you can do is you can just kind of just take your index and just do, this will give it more of a spray. You know, you can try different things on paper. Purple ones. Just kind of away from the bird. And what I did on some of them, where I was just like just not too sure. You can even take a brush and, you know, add some that are more deliberate on your behalf. Like some of them are just a little bit larger. Let's see, look close up. Okay, there's a big shadow. That's kind of what they look like close up. You know, they could use a little bit more detailing, but I think for the time that we've had, that's been good. And just have fun with it. It's just fun and free flowing, free like a bird. Okay. So, how did everyone do? Can you unmute yourselves, or Melissa, can you unmute them? Or unmute yourselves? I don't know if that's what we're doing. Okay. All right. That looks great, Susanna. Beautiful. Almost looks like colored pencil. It's good. Sharon, how did you do?
Okay, I didn't, can I see Susanna's for a second?
Okay.
I didn't see
Susanna,
yours,
can you-
Susanna. I was trying to get to gallery thing. Nice, nice, nice.
Really
Yeah,
nice.
mine needs a lot of work.
Okay. Okay. Susanna,
I
you really worked on the colors very gradually, very carefully. It really turned out well. Sharon, let's see. They look good. You see that one, the guy on the right? Okay.
yeah.
See, as
he
long as
needs
you don't
work.
go too, yeah, I think just some of the greens need a little bit more yellow, need a little bit more tweaking on them.
Yeah,
But I think they're on the right path. You know, I would kind of start them off like really light. Like this is one I had, this is kind of like what it would look like when you first start it. And where's the other one I did? And then, you know, this one. So the one I did is probably the darkest one. But you want to start off light and then just accent the dark areas. Lisa, how did you do? You can unmute yourself. We can listen to you.
I only got a couple done. You see?
Oh,
Yeah,
you
they
made
were.
cards already. You're set.
Well, you know what? Because I decided I could only get 2 done, but I didn't end up doing it as loose as yours. I did more.
Okay. Okay, they're sweet though.
Yeah, I'm gonna try looser. I like them loose.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you need any help.
Okay.
Okay, Phyllis.
I just listened. I'll do it afterwards.
Okay, that's totally fine. I know some people prefer that, so I know I couldn't do both if I had to. Lucia. Beautiful. Wow.
Beautiful.
Very nice. Beautiful colors. Marlene, how did you do? Can you unmute? Just unmute the microphone button.
There we are. I
Okay.
just watched. I just
Okay,
watched
all right.
because I'm having such trouble making the different colors. So I'm
Okay. All right.
trying to learn.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just honestly, color mixing comes with practice. And what makes it hard for me from being where I am is that I can't see the sets that you're using. I know what some of you are using, but you really have to just kind of work on getting your eye to recognize, is this blue greenish or purplish? Does it have an undertone of this and that? It's just sharpening your eye, and that really comes with practice, you know. And what, you know, if we had enough time, where we used to have, you know, when we were meeting in person, we had 2 hours. Now we have 1 hour, so it's all rush, and, you know, just making sure that everyone can get work in. But ideally, what I would like you to do is, when you are working with a specific color palette, is practice mixing those colors beforehand. And we do that a lot in class. We will just do like strips, you know, of just the color from dark to light, or from blue to purple, back to red, to you know, back and forth. So just the more you mix colors and know your set, the more it'll become more spontaneous. But yeah, absolutely, watching is great. I'm so glad that everyone is here, and I hope you enjoyed this. I really like these birds. They're so sweet. So next week, it's going to be pencil. We're just going to be just go kind of classic. So you can use a colored pencil, like if you want just, you know, like a colored pencil, like a brown or a black, or you could use just straight up pencil, any pencil. It can be like a soft pencil, a B. Just make sure it's in pencil form. We're not doing like a graphite stick or a charcoal. So it's going to be pencil. I will see you next week, and let me know if you have any questions, and I will send Justin anything else you want other than these new watercolors and some of the extra colors.